Hello. Are we live on YouTube? Hello, everyone. Very warm welcome to the community, and we are really excited to get this started. Right. So my name is Saurabh Singh, and I'm here to take the opportunity to introduce the event to all of you guys. So I think we can get started. Rajiv, you can start sharing your screen. Yes, so the title is Break into Rockstar UX Jobs, and we are going to talk in length about it. Now I want to take the opportunity to introduce our key speaker for today. So if we can go to the next slide. So meet Prasad. He has built, trained, and mentored high-performance design teams across the world. If we talk about Colombia, India, Taiwan, all these countries. And he has also co-founded UXReactor, which is an Inc. 5000 company, recognized as one of the fastest growing specialty UX design companies in the US, right? He has got 6 patents. He has designed the search assistance feature that is used by every internet user around the world, right? When you use the search, Google search, you see that search assistant feature that is there, right? That is patented by Prasad, right? So, hello, Prasad. We are glad to meet you. We really want to understand your story that, you have been leading UXReactor, but now you have joined as chief instructor in college. So, what is your story? Basically, we are really curious to know about it.
Cool. Thanks, Saurabh. So just to clarify, Collej is a part of UXReactor, and obviously I've done that. Worked with a lot of cool companies, worked with a lot of interesting products and stuff like that. But one of the things that has always been a part of my job role, regardless of wherever I would build my teams, would be to go and train people, right? So I've basically traveled pretty much all around the world. There was a time when Europe, Asia Pacific, Latin America, all of these kinds of countries, I was building teams and I was going to all these places and training people and coming back. And the reason why we do a lot of that is it's all about talent. Right? Companies will live and die based on talent, on the quality of talent that they have. And so invariably, even when we started UXReactor, the first thing that we didn't even actually go get our first client. We actually set up a training program so we could train our people before we got our first client. So we trained people for 6 months before we got our first client. But at the end of the day, our goal has always been to kind of get the best talent. And, recently we just had this thought process, which was like, when we are looking for people, there's a lot of competition for people between companies, for good people, right? And we said, okay, I can either compete with every other company in the industry, or we can all partner together to get the best talent. And so if we go on to the next slide, that's exactly what we are doing. So actually, no, let's go back. So I think the point being is we are collaborating with a lot of different companies, because we say if I'm only recruiting in Hyderabad for my company, I might just recruit locally. But if there are 5, 6, 7 companies, everybody's interested in getting the best talent, then we are going national and we are trying to look for the best people around the country. And that's what the vision and dream is. But at the same time, we don't just want to make it transactional where we are just selecting people and saying you're rejected or whatever, because we realize there are a lot of people that are really, really good, but with just the right amount of guidance and support, they would actually become good designers. And so our philosophy is, yes, we want to hire, but at the same time, we want to help you get better and kind of be able to be aware, eligible for those kinds of opportunities in the future. So let's go on to the next slide. So what we are going to talk about is, it's a very simple 3-day process. On the first day, we are going to talk about, well, what do current jobs look like, right? Understanding, well, how do people look at your portfolio or your work, and how does the interview and the hiring process happen? But one thing I want to do is we also have with us Bhaskar. He's going to talk about how doing his portfolio right and planning his strategy helped him quadruple his salary within just just nailed it, right? So that's something that we are going to hear from Bhaskar later today. And then on day 2, we will talk about, we understand, Bhaskar succeeded. Now, how can you succeed? The question is, how do we help you customize your portfolio? How do we help you customize your strategy for getting a job? We'll also talk about the tips that 5 tips that can help you design a really good portfolio. And on day 3, we will talk about interviews. How do you communicate? How do you up-level your title? Because then if you're coming as an individual contributor, how do you become a lead? So there's a lot of strategy involved there. There's also understanding what kinds of tasks companies will give you and how you are expected to kind of complete those tasks. And perhaps on a more comprehensive level, there are about 34 interview questions. We looked at all the possible interview questions that you can get. And they're not many, right? It's just 34 interview questions that you should definitely prepare for. And once you prepare and you're systematic about it, then your chances of getting into good jobs or like the jobs that you want increase dramatically. Okay. So with that said, if everybody is ready, just type in yes, and then we can get to the next slide. Awesome. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. So why are we doing this? We have an immediate need right now. So, they're primarily UXReactor, which is the company that I founded, and there's another company, NB Healthcare Technologies. We are an Inc. 5000 company. NB Technologies is an Inc. 100 company. So these are like, really good companies. And we are looking for talent, right? That is what our immediate need is. And so what we are basically going to do is we're going to talk about all of this, but then we'll also have some really interesting announcements towards tomorrow that we will share with you. But our vision is, again, we want to hire and develop the best talent. And that is the 1-point agenda. And there are lots of other companies that are down there, and we are basically working. We will talk more about it towards tomorrow. Let's go on to the next slide. So what we want to achieve as part of this workshop is, number one, we want to just really demystify the hiring process. How does hiring work? And you get to talk to me and you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, because I really want you to kind of go away from this thinking, okay, I have my answers. I don't have any more questions. So that is something that, we want to make sure you walk away from here. Sorry. We also want to be able to give you tips and ways that you can upskill and build your skill sets. And finally, of course, the hiring, and that we want to talk about our hiring process and how we're going to hire. And then we basically want to see, how we're going to get to that step. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So one thing is, for all of you, as well as for all the folks that are watching on YouTube, I would strongly encourage you to kind of subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of content. All my classes that I teach are available there for you guys. The people that are presenting their portfolios are out here. We also bring in a lot of experts to come and talk. These are design leaders from around the world. They come in and they talk about their perspectives about what design is and how they've solved interesting problems. So the channel link is down below. So I would encourage you, just go ahead and subscribe and follow it so you'll get the latest information. But that's where it is. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so some basic ground rules. Number one, this is all about a safe environment. There's no such thing as a bad question. If you have a question, there's probably 100 odd people who will all have the same question in mind. So we do not judge. Our intention is to help you grow your career. So do not worry about what we're going to think. Participate and contribute actively, because the more you participate, the more you build relationships amongst yourself. And one thing that I would say is, like, keep your cameras on, because that's also a way for participation, because people can recognize each other, you build relationships. And the other thing is, be kind and courteous to everyone, because everybody is at different stages in their life. So be nice and respect each other's privacy. And then I think the most important one is, if you believe this workshop is helping you, help us spread the word so more people hear about it and they come in, and then we are able to kind of achieve all of our goals together. Let's go on to the next slide, please. All right. So here's the main thing. So this is something that happened way back in 2015. All of a sudden in 2015, a lot of companies started sponsoring their senior leadership for design trainings in some of the top design schools in the US. Okay, Stanford Design School or University of Michigan Design School. So a lot of people started, senior leadership started going there and started being referring. And then the other interesting thing that started happening was most business schools started co-locating with design schools, so started offering cross referrals in those programs. And what happened at that moment was something really phenomenal. So there was the Design Management Institute did this research, and they said if you had invested $10,000 in two companies, the top 500 companies designed by, as defined by S&P 500, or the top companies that were focused on design only, right? And the design-centric companies are Coca-Cola, Apple, Ford. Some of them are obvious. Some of them, I'm sure you'd be surprised when you look at them like, hey, how is Procter & Gamble a design company, right? But a lot of these companies are design companies because they use design at the center of what they do. And what they realized was that $10,000 would be worth approximately about $18,000 if you just invested on the S&P 500. But if you had invested in the top design companies, it would have been worth almost about $38,000. It was almost a 211% increase. And so this is when businesses started sitting up and they're saying, oh, wow, this is the value of design. So let's actually start hiring good design people. Let's start building out amazing design teams. So that was a huge change. Okay. Now, a couple of other things started happening in the market. Let's go on to the next slide. Right. And Priyal, I'll answer your question towards the end, actually, let me just answer it, right? How do you define design is companies that keep the user at the center of everything that they do. Okay. Their communication is based on the center, on the user in the center. Their product is based on the user. Like, for example, if you look at Nike, right? Nike is all about just do it, right? It's about the individual who's basically pushing the boundary. It's not about a super athlete, but it's about individuals that are pushing the boundary. If you look at Apple, right? Apple is all about the vision of being a rule breaker, of redefining status quo. So when you look at a lot of these companies, they keep the customer at the center of it, and everything else is built around it, including your products, your communication, everything. So that's what is a design-centric company. It's not a company that just does good designs, but rather aligns every department within the company towards achieving that goal for the customer. So hopefully that answers your question. Now when you're looking at this component where you're looking how quickly companies are evolving, okay, so it took the telephone 75 years to get to the first 50 million customers. Okay, the same thing Pokemon Go did in about 19 days. Right, and so what is interesting is as we get more and more digital, companies are realizing the kind of growth and the kind of opportunity that they can get as they're moving in. And so what is also happening is there is a huge demand within companies that say, I want people who are capable of helping me achieve this vision. I want people who are capable of helping me achieve that kind of growth and those kinds of systems. And so this is where, again, design plays a huge critical role and this is where I'm specifically talking about UX design. Because now UX designers are now become the front and center where they're designing the product itself. And they're looking for these guys who can kind of help you achieve that kind of scale very, very quickly. Okay. And this is where you start thinking about gamification. You start thinking about how quickly you are getting, the rewards to the customers, how quickly, you're able to build a relationship, how quickly you're able to deliver value. So these are all things that companies are basically looking for designers to push in terms of their agenda. Okay. So what is also happening as a consequence of that, if we go on to the next slide, is this, right? And this is not just an India thing. This is happening all around the world, where you look at, what is the demand for professionals, experienced folks, right? And year over year, it's just basically increasing. Earlier, companies, would be willing to say, okay, I'm a bootstrap company. I'm going to hire a junior designer first. and then get something done, and then I'm going to hire senior level people after that. But really, as we see more and more, the attitude is changing. They're saying, what, design is really critical. We want to get a senior person in earlier so that they can basically tell us what to do, rather than us kind of basically go around in circles at a later point. So the other realization that companies are also realizing is, if I do bad design right now, I have an engineering debt that I have to pay later, because I either have to redesign everything or rebuild it. Now it becomes really expensive at a later point. So that's the other part. The third thing companies are realizing is, if I get an experienced designer, they're going to help me manage my risks faster, right? They're going to help my organization focus on the core components faster, as opposed to doing everything, because the senior designer is going to look at it and say, let's not look at all 50 features, let's look at these top 3 features and go execute. So that's also something that companies are looking for in terms of hiring senior or people experienced folks, because you don't want to redo everything and kind of grow. So this is actually really good news. And the other thing that's also interesting is, fewer and fewer companies care about degrees. They don't really care if you have a master's in design or a bachelor's in design. Of course, it helps. If you have a degree, it helps that you can get your foot in the door. But it's not just about that. It's also about whether the person is able to execute on the ground and make things happen. So that's the mindset shift that's happening. It's execution over somebody who has just a degree. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. So this is something that is going to be fundamental to everything we're going to talk about in the next 3 days. And this is where we're talking about the 3 different types of companies. And if you have a doubt, you have questions, please feel free to ask, because I'm going to make sure this one component is answered for you. So there are 3 types of companies. Type 1 companies are companies, that don't know what UX is, and they really don't care about it. Okay. Type 2 companies are companies that know what UX is, they've heard it, or somebody has talked to them, or their VCs told them, but they really don't know what to do to kind of get, become a UX or a design-centric company. And type 3 companies are the mature companies. These are the companies that are aware of what UX is, they know how to build a team, they have all the systems in place, and they are willing to pay a premium for that talent, right? Now, conversely, when you start looking at the demand and supply, and again, salaries are usually defined by demand and supply. If you have more demand, less supply, obviously your salaries are higher. If you have, less demand, more supply, your salaries go low. So when you look at type 1 companies, usually there's a pretty good, decent demand. It's almost about 30 to 40% of all the companies that are out there. And the supply is also there, because there are lots of people that understand tools or whatever. And so the demand and supply connects up and matches. And so when you look at the salaries, they are on the lower end. And you will probably see, those salaries in the 3 lakh, 4 lakh range. And these are all type 1 type companies, that are looking at, I don't want to pay a lot of money. I just want to, I'm going to tell somebody, get the job done, and I'm going to micromanage that individual to get the job done, and it gets done. Now, type 2 companies on the other side are interesting. Type 2 companies are aware. Now, within that spectrum too, you have type 2 companies that are, aware of what UX is, but they really have no clue, right? And they are on the lower end of type 2, but the higher end of type 2 is, okay, now they've done a lot of experiments and they've already just started figuring out what their system is, and they're ready to transition. So type 2 companies, there's a lot of demand, because that's almost about 50 to 60% of all the companies that are there in that space. There's a lot of demand, but supply for designers is low. And usually these type 2 companies will do hit and miss. They will try to hire at different salary ranges. They'll try to hire at different numbers, or, you will see the hiring managers going and taking classes on what should I look for in designers and stuff like that. And that's where they're kind of hiring. And usually these guys pay decently well. And that's where they're trying to build it up. But a lot of it is still experimental. This is awesome for folks that want to start scaling up. So if you want to, be in the company where you're doing a lot of different things and you want to help the company get to a type 3, this is an awesome place for designers to be, because you're growing with the company. And then you have the type 3 companies that are the Rockstar, the guys that are already established, done their systems and processes. They're only about 5 to 15% of the companies in the market. So the demand obviously is not that high, but the supply for this kind of talent is extremely low. The kind of talent these guys are looking for is like literally like a very, very small percentage. And so this is where type 3 companies are aware of it and they're willing to pay for that quality of talent. And now the question I get is, should I go for type 3 or type 2? Because type 3, there's not that much volume. But again, my argument is, there is no supply, right? So whether you're going for a type 2 or a type 3, there is no supply. So if you can qualify for a type 3, by all means, go into a type 3, right? But the interesting challenge with a type 3 company is, because they have systems and processes already set up, type 3 companies will generally tend to make you specialize in one domain or the other, and you kind of go from there. So any questions or thoughts at this point? All right, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so now when you want to understand the hiring process, and again, when you look at LinkedIn or different forums, you will see people complaining one way or the other, I'm not going to do a task. Why do you want me to do a task where, you can pay me a salary, whatever. I mean, I think I don't want to get into those details, because the practicality is companies want to evaluate, right? The practicality is there are a lot of fake resumes out there. Right. And so when you are, when you want to look at people, you need to have some kind of a criteria that kind of tells people, whether this person is good or can get the job done or not. So when you look at the overall process, it's a multi-step process where, the first step is, of course, you apply with your portfolio, then you talk to a recruiter, then you do a screening, and then there's probably a design task either before you go for an on-site task or for an on-site, or you'll get the task during the on-site itself, and then you do the on-site and then you get an offer, right? So overall, when you think about it, especially with high type 2 and type 3 companies, the general ratios that you see is for every 400 people that apply, you will probably get offers for 2 people. And out of those 2 people, because again, the demand is so high, you would be, one person might probably convert for you. So that is the way that most companies look at it is, we need to go broad. We need to basically go recruit and go through the process. Okay. So let's actually look at this. What type of jobs do we have to do in type 3 companies? So Sarita says that, well, type 3 companies generally will have specializations, and we will talk about it tomorrow in a little bit more detail. However, generally they will have interaction research, interaction design, visual design, research. They will probably have a specialization in prototyping. They will have a specialization in content. So you'll have multiple specializations, and you have these specialists working together to kind of get an experience done. Okay, so that's how it is. Whereas when you look at type 2 companies, they're not looking at specialists, they're looking at combination folks, people who can do interaction and visual, or interaction visual research. So there'll be different combinations that type 2 companies will be looking for. So again, that's a function of the processes, right? Type 3 companies are tighter on processes, they're tighter on systems, and so you want higher quality. So that's where hopefully that answers your question, Sarita. Pranjali says, why are companies not hiring freshers? Right. Well, to be honest, there is still quite a significant demand for freshers. However, the biggest challenge that we see is, we are under a lot of pressure. Most companies are under a lot of pressure, right? And so when we are looking, if I bring in a fresher, the biggest challenge is some senior person has to give their time to you to kind of help you, groom you, and set it up, right? And I need willing people to do that. Now, if you have a lot of delivery pressure, most leaders, senior people will say, I don't have the time to mentor or manage anybody. And that is where the problem comes. So it's not that companies don't want to hire freshers, but it's a function of, the workload that's on the ground. And especially when you start seeing layoffs and stuff happening. Earlier, the job that was done by, let's say, 10 people is getting done by now 7 people. So the workload increases. And the moment the workload increases, then people cannot give time to mentor and grow other people. And that's what is the problem, Pranjali. That's why hiring freshers slows down when in a bad economy, right? And, Kiran says for type 3 companies, if you're a fresher and you want to shift domains, would that mindset be a problem? Actually, it depends how you communicate it. And we have Bhaskar is going to talk about that because he shifted domains. And I think he will be able to answer that question a lot more. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the rest of the questions at a later point, but let's keep going. I know Guneet basically has a question. What would you suggest for a designer who's at a beginner level? Arun says, is it mandatory for UX designers to have CSS, HTML? The answer is no, it's not mandatory, but we will talk about that. Just yesterday, I did a video on that where we evaluated a bunch of job descriptions and we said, what kind of a company is it? So, if somebody could just share the link and put it in there, that will be great. So if you just watch that video, I think it will answer that question for you. And then, can you please give a few examples of type 2 and type 3 companies? Type 3 companies would be like a Google, or, when you look at UXReactor, we're a type 3 company, or when you look at, let's see, Microsoft is a really good type 3 company. So these are all companies. And again, even within those companies, you will have different variations of it. So, and again, there's not saying that, only companies that are listed on the stock market are type 3 companies. No, there's a wide range of type 3 companies across the board, and we can talk about it at a later point, but yeah. All right. So let's go on to the list, this one. So if you want to understand the way the hiring process works, okay, generally at the application stage, when you're applying, you'll have like some HR person who's looking at your portfolio, okay, and your resume. And they've probably, got 400 portfolios and resumes, and they're looking at it very, very quickly. So, they will not give you more than 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and they're going very, very quickly. So what you need to think about at that point is, how do I get my portfolio noticed? How do I get my resume noticed? How do I stand out from all the 400 people that are out there? Okay. And how do I make sure that the HR person is very quickly able to decide that I have the skills that match the requirement? Now, the next step is when you talk to a recruiter, this is when the recruiter will look at all the portfolio and say, okay, yeah, here are like a few resumes. Let me talk to that person. So they will probably spend about 15 to 30 minutes talking to you. And when they're talking to you, the kinds of questions that they're going to be asking is, hey, do you understand what you're talking about? They're just going to do a very basic skill test. And keep in mind that the recruiter or the HR person does not know design. They're just trying to talk to you and say, can this person communicate? Is what the person saying making sense? Okay, do I trust this person? That's very, very basic. So it's all about trust and communication skills, and that's where you're looking at on the talking to the recruiter. Now, the technical screening is the first time when a technical person is going to look at it. Okay, so what the HR is going to do is they're going to take all of these 400 resumes, bring it down to a certain number, and give it to the technical person. Says, here are the people that I think are good. Okay, why don't you look at that and tell me what's going on? So what they're going to look at is they're going to look through the portfolio to really understand, okay, is this person senior, junior, or mid? And then, do they know, are they making some obvious mistakes, kind of a stuff? And they're very quickly validating your skills. So for example, if you say, okay, I'm an expert in Photoshop, they look at your artifacts, say, okay, well, does it match? What is the quality? And so when you look at it, they'll probably look at each portfolio for no more than 5 minutes, and the person is going to be a designer. Right? And then they will give you a design task, either in the on-site or before that. So they will give you a design task, and they're not looking for quality. And this is something that I want you to keep in mind is they're not looking for the final product. Of course, the final product is going to be important, but that's not the only thing that they're looking at. They're looking at, how did you plan? What were your conceptual skills? How did you execute? How did you communicate? How did you document? And those are all the things that they're looking at. And so when you get a task, they'll probably look at it for 10 to 15 minutes, and the team might have like maybe 2 or 3 people looking at the same task. And then you will have multiple people reporting, because at this point, the company does not want to lose good candidates. And so the task is given and multiple people will get to vote. And then there'll be a discussion and say, good, this person is good, bad, whatever. And then that decision comes in. And then that's when you get invited for an on-site or a remote step. This is where they're looking at soft skills. They're looking at cultural skills. Will I enjoy working with this person? Will I, they'll also look at, hey, how would this person work out in a professional environment? There might be different styles of interviewing, which we will talk about on the third day. But usually this process will take anywhere between 45 minutes to 60 minutes. I've seen some of the bigger type 3 companies will spend a whole day interviewing you. So literally you will go in at 9 a.m. in the morning and you are coming out at 4 p.m. in the afternoon and you are exhausted. And everybody is literally talking and sharing and planning for how to kind of interview you, where are your pressure points, where are your weak points and all that stuff. So there's like a lot of strategy that goes into that. But yeah, type 3 companies will invest a lot of time and energy in doing that. Once it's done, there'll be a background check and then you have the offer, hopefully, right? So this is what the overall process looks like. But how do you now approach this process? If you want to look at it from a strategic perspective, let's go on to the next slide. This is where your UX portfolio starts having a lot of influence. Okay, if you do a good UX portfolio or you do an interesting UX portfolio, when you're doing the on-site interview, your UX portfolio is the beginning to have a conversation, right? So they will look at it and start having conversations around it. So when you're completing a design task, you're applying, so people are comparing with the portfolio. This person said they knew how to do this. Now, when you look at the design task, did they really achieve? Have they demonstrated the skills that they have done as part of the portfolio? Because this is also where you kind of look at fake resumes. So it's very easy to kind of look at, okay, yeah, this person did really good quality of work, and suddenly when you do your design task, the quality goes down significantly. And you can tell, yeah, there's some kind of a disconnect out here. When you're doing the technical skills, again, it's a portfolio that is critical there, because somebody's looking at your portfolio now, trying to define what role you're going to go into, or whether you're going to be a good match for the role that I have. And then they're asking you the questions to see whether you can defend yourself. When you talk to a recruiter, of course, the portfolio is like interesting. It's eye candy. They're looking at it and they're kind of saying, okay, does it seem to have everything, right? So the most common thing throughout all of those is the portfolio. This portfolio is the centerpiece that sets the discussion for the whole process. And that's where you need to start thinking about it. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. So now there's actually Abhijit had a very interesting question. And this is, how do hiring steps differ based on the type of company? Good. So when you're looking at type 1 companies, they will look at your artifacts. Okay. So they will look at, did this person do a good visual? Did they do that? So they don't really care about your process or your system. It's just artifacts. And Bhaskar will talk about that, because there is a perfect example of that. Then if you look at type 2, the higher type 2 kind of companies, they will want to look at your problem solving skills or the way you've executed on your design. They will definitely look at your artifacts, but they'll also look at the reasoning behind your artifacts. Why did you do the way you did? Okay. And when you're looking at type 3 companies, they're actually looking to see whether you understand the complexity, whether you understand, all the different aspects of that problem, and you're bringing it together as part of your conversation. And again, this is exactly one of the reasons why we have Bhaskar, because he's going to talk about the whole gamut, because he's going to talk about like 4 portfolios that he did and how each of the portfolios was at different levels and how it worked out for him. So he's going to share that. So hopefully, Abhijit, that answers your question. All right. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So now I'm going to introduce Bhaskar. Bhaskar is an architect by training from from a really good school. And I say school from an American perspective, because in the US, a school is a bachelor's as well as a master's program as well. So he's got a bachelor's degree in architecture. He worked as a designer for 3 years in a type 1 company. Okay. Then he joined College, and he's one of those, what you'd call the rough gems, the rough diamonds, right? So we were able to connect. We realized like, okay, yeah, this guy's got like insane potential. Let's actually work with him. And it was a process. We kind of got there. And then towards the end, he applied to 5 companies and got 5 offers, right? And all of these in multiples of his original salary. So I would now transition over to Bhaskar. And Bhaskar, it's all yours. I'd love for you to present what you've done and how you've kind of approached it.
Yeah, hi everyone. So thank you for this opportunity. I'll just quickly share my screen. I hope it is visible.
Yes.
So I would be talking about my whole portfolio journey, which took from 1x to the 4x salary, and how I ideated on 4 different levels of it. So to quickly introduce myself, so I am Bhaskar and I am working as a UX product designer at Pega, and I am from an architecture background with around 4.5 years of experience in UX as well as a type company 3 years. And once I started transitioning from architecture, so that's where I faced challenges. So even there were the best design schools, I tried to clear it, but I couldn't get into it. I got my first job via internship, and that's how I started my career there. And I am part of the pragmatic internship program of college, the batch one. Right now, I want to talk about my portfolio. So my portfolio is more about a project which I have executed in work, and I wanted to create when I was switching for a job. So for the first time, what my step was just to see what are the available portfolios around, and then take inspirations. How would I create it to stand out? And I had 3 major decisions. So I need to include each and every stage of design for getting that respect and credibility. Then also I see all the processes. I mean, saw all the processes and took one trending process to highlight that I know that thing, just to showcase my awareness. And also I had this solution mindset that okay, only the end result matters, whereas the process doesn't care because they look at the screens. So I went for a first interview, which is with this portfolio, and it was in early type 2 company which was making a shift. So at this point of time, I had an all-rounded portfolio. I had all the 3 things: research, design, I mean interaction, and visual. And then I went with a feature-centric approach. It's more like, okay, this product has this features. And I showcased all the articles which I have done. I didn't prioritize them. I showcased everything that is, I know everything. Kind of. And then even the ideation I have done. So with this approach, I was able to get close to 1.65x my salary at that point. But when I reflected upon it, so it was more like I talked to my mentors. Okay, this is what it happened, and then I got to know that even in the interview, the feedback was it's more like a text centric, and it's only kind of how execution storyline, and there was no interest till the solution point of view. And it's almost like no focus on slides and all. It was text centric. So then I improved the second. So for the second interview, what I did, even this was an early type of company. So I started including in a screen-centric approach, where how the screen connects, and then I prioritize the artifacts, only place relevant artifacts, and I communicated like I have executed the process, but I have added a design goals this point of time. And here comes thing. So for a surprise, I got rejected by this company. And then when I reflected upon the interview and then got feedback and I talked to mentors, it was more like there was a mismatch between the company. They were expecting one role and I was focusing on more kind of UX kind of thing. And then even I didn't plan for these kind of what company it was. I was not aware. I applied and I got an interview chance and I pitched it. And since this was a new kind of experience, there was less practice. And for myself, I took more time to explain during the interview process. I think I got rejected. Now I did upon a third kind of approach where I focus on the whole product level. And then I try to pitch in my observation skills. How did I observe in the product level and how there was user outcomes, what I was trying to achieve. And I introduced metrics like how to achieve that goal. And I created whole level new artifacts. And then I focused on only my strengths. This time I realized, okay, if I didn't have something, I have to focus on my strength and I have to pitch myself in those lines. Where I got my salary as a 2x. I doubled my salary with this approach. Now, when I went into the interview experience, so interview experience was a whole different level. Like there was discussion about my future aspirations. There was no discussion about what it was and why did I solve the problem kind of thing. It was more about okay, how this kind of experience or the product thing, those little elements are matching to their product. And here, what I call as a big mistake kind of thing where I revealed my current salary, which I think shouldn't be there, right? In terms of this whole interview process. Now with this whole feedback, I went on to my next interview, which was an early type 3 company, right? They had those experience. This time I had an experience and ecosystem kind of mindset. So how I changed my whole scope of thought, and I communicated like more kind of an senior perspective kind of thing, where I talked about business as well as user outcome, and also had a strategic mindset like why I think this is important and why those metrics mattered for this problem. And also I've introduced new kind of thing, like since it was an experience, I started a comparative solutions like how it is right now and then how it would be in the future kind of thing. So which got my 4x. Right? This was a surprise because here I didn't communicate and I was very um, focused on not to give my current salary, and then this was the outcome. Here when I again reflected on it, it was more in an interview, it was more about how could an alternate process would result in a different kind of experience, right? And also what frameworks did I use to solve this problem. This was the conversation that happened in this interview, not in kind of okay, what is that thing and why did it fix later. It was never in terms of artifacts, though I had artifacts in at back of my presentation. Now, this was the change. What happened when I strategically planned for interviews as well as applied for those companies, right? And now I would like to showcase my portfolio and pitch exactly how I did it in my code. Any questions or thoughts about it before I start?
So I think Swapnali is asking a question. Can we get a link to view these portfolios? It will be really helpful. So Swapnali, whatever is being presented is going to be put on YouTube as well. So you can go in and watch that. There are also other portfolio reviews that we've done on YouTube. So you can see that as well. So there are examples that are available. And then I think you would be able to probably answer this one question. Okay. How did the hiring differ based on the type of company?
Right. So I have interviewed for all the three type of companies. So first type of company expects what is there in the market, right? I mean, even before joining it, so we see we need the all the skills, tool competence, and all. And then once we interview, we get to know that they are looking for basically UI designers, not in the terms of experience as product kind of. And then if it was a type 2, so there would be a screening component even before. We need to share our portfolios before it. And then only once they feel we are worthy, then there will be an interview call that will be scheduled for a technical round, not even the design details. Whereas in the type 3 company, it would be more like we share the same portfolios and then we get to a technical interview. Then there will be a portfolio interview round, and there will be a whole discussion live task which will be done, and then there will be another task which will be given for you not in presence of anyone, and then you need to solve it and then showcase the same presentation. So there will be multiple steps where they will be analyzing each and every component of you, verifying like how Prasad had told that is my task and is my portfolio matching up. So that would be a basic difference between three different companies.
Ayesha has a question that says you showed only one project of at the portfolio at a time, or commonly the normal expectation is you have to show at least 3 projects, whether it's dummy or real. So what is your opinion on that?
So I think when we are trying for a comparatively like type 2 or type 3 companies, we'll be getting only 15 minutes to present. And I don't think it's a good option to actually have 2 or 3 kind of projects just to showcase in that 15 minutes. So what I think is one project is good enough, which we are very confident, we are strong, that we are defending each and every component of it. And if they ask, let's say there's a use case which I also faced. So this was more towards a web kind of design dashboard kind of thing, where they asked how are your mobile skills. So I had in back of my mind, I could showcase if there was additional time that they could interview and talk about. So I think you can have, if there is a need, I mean, again, it is planning towards the JD, what they communicate, and then how we interview the other person too, like how we ask questions about the job role, and then is it web based, because we see a lot of things like in JDs, there is iOS, Android, and then web, we need all of them. Right? For those kind of roles, we need to be ready with one web or mobile kind of.
So you'd have additional stuff in your appendix. So if they say, hey, have you done mobile? Yes. Have you done, okay, cool. So there are a lot of questions, but I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to see your portfolio, the winning portfolio. So why don't you share it? And then if there are any, questions that are not answered, we will definitely get back to them.
So this is a work project, as I communicated, and it's a product based out of US. So I would like to talk about this insurance management and how I reduce the deduction rates in the whole ecosystem. So to give more context about this product, it's a home care services provider where they provide aftercare services to the people who has been discharged from the hospital at home. And they provide these three services, which are nursing, therapy, and medical support. And in US, all these three services are being covered under the health insurance. Right. So due to this component that they are covered in health insurance, 90% of the revenue come from the insurance companies and not from the patients. Right. Now, when I looked at the whole ecosystem, right, there were 5 different phases where this business operates. And there are 3 different systems and 6 different users where they actually act upon each and every different areas of work. Now, when I looked at it, there were numerous type of confusion, right? And there are points of failure where in each and every stage, because there are multiple insurances which had multiple rules. There were different types of billings, maybe periodic billing or a single visit based billing, right? And then there are frequency of billing differs from different things. So once I carefully observed each and every stage, I found out that the 4th phase is prone to fail because there was a transition between clinical people and non-clinical, because all of them who were before, those are more kind of clinical people who understands what is happening there, what kind of treatment, whereas the other person doesn't understand, and if there is any mismatch, they would lose the whole claim amount which was expected from the insurance company. Now when I looked at just single experience, like how does a person file a claim, so a filing executive actually files a claim to an insurance company with all these details. Now, if he has to do this one certain task, he has to be aware of all the cases, what are the important claims, and what are the different insurance rules, actually, and how to prioritize them, and know what steps if there are any mismatches and all. So for this single task, he needs to be dependent on a case manager to actually frequently contact him and get going in his, get out of his seat, go to his chamber, and then ask all these things. And even if there are missing details in any of these components, they need to contact again all the persons, which is a longer process kind of thing. What is that? And if they don't do it in time, they lose the whole amount of claim amount for one particular case. And we are talking about like maybe around $3,000 to $5,000 on an average. Once I looked at their screen, this is what they actually operate. It literally looks like a wireframe with black and white colors. And then when I tried to understand what is happening in this there, so I found out there were multiple problems that people cannot understand what is there in it, what to focus on, and how to recognize a claim, and what are the next steps, or how to prioritize them, what are the next steps. And it turns out that the first part is claim listing, and the first list, whatever is there, the first claim, those details are at the bottom, which is not the right kind of mental model. So now, when I looked at all these things, I found out their whole revenue is at risk because of this much confusion in the ecosystem. And also people were leaving this because they found this was more kind of challenging role, which is why there was significant attrition in the whole company. Now, when I looked at this whole thing, so I found that the whole problems could solve by ensuring just one thing, that is timeliness. So if each person does do it in their specific time, the claim rejection would be 50% reduced and the revenue is almost same. So when I took all the problems and see what were the higher problems, there were the 3 different problems which I found out. There were complex rules which was causing confusion. There were multiple differences between people, and there were delays due to it. And the whole process became lengthy because of these many things, and there were rejections due to it. The client was getting rejected. So when I strategized about it, so I thought like whatever the solution would be there, it should have a guidance kind of thing where it is guiding each and every people for the next steps and also making them aware of each and every detail, as well as there is an advisory system to just help them focus on it and also get them reminded about the timeliness, and also a communication system to avoid just that kind of getting out of the seat or having a phone call offline and then asking for those details. Also establishing an accountability in those aspects. So when we look at just the experience, the current experience, there were three different systems as I talked about earlier. There is EMR system where they identify a claim and then they find the same claim in the HTTPS dashboard and then they export it using a clearing house. So this is how the whole ecosystem works. When I saw, when I framed it in this diagrammatical manner, it's more like they had a to and fro motions for three different systems, which almost took like 6 steps to find out and do the task. And also it took close to 25 minutes to actually do the task. Whereas for the new workflow, which I thought about it, it's more like there is a single unified system. And then due to that single unified system, the comparison is more like it's just 3 steps. The significant is significantly reduced by half. And also time taken is also reduced by half, increasing their efficiency. Now, what did I do it? Right? I tried to unify the whole system where there is no dependency on different systems. And I also introduced the familiar mental model, like there is a kind of prioritized action items. You drill down to the list and then you use the details. So that is what happens in every use case in every other product. And I try to prioritize the action items even before when they want to figure out, just to increase the findability and discovery. As a result, there was a fourth component which happened. It's more like it was not, it didn't require most kind of training for it, which was a business win for it. And also it was, the solution was immune to employee attrition. So explaining about the design. So in the home screen, this is used by multiple people and there are multiple components. But just for this experience, the claims are being segregated via their statuses, and also they can be easily focused on for quick discoverability. And also most of the important action items are being color coded to communicate the urgency. Right? Because of this thing, the discoverability component, there is increased discoverability and people can discover immediately what is the action item, and there is less dependency. And also the focus is enhanced because of the color coding. Now, when we navigate to any of such, the second stage of it, so let's say from here, unfiled claims. So when we look at it, the unfiled claims are listed with respect to revenue. And what is the topmost claim that is revenue expected from it? And what is the timeline for it to submit? Right? And the list is in a sequence automatically without even eliminating the dependency and ambiguity of how to act upon it. And also they're color coded to communicate the urgency. And there is an accelerator which was thought about, like the suggestion. So what are the next steps kind of thing, just to reduce the dependency kind of. And also there was filters which would actually help them find a specific claim in edge cases kind of thing. And also the components were more familiar. So as a result, they could actually act upon what are the prioritized action items. There is no ambiguity. And there is focus, which is communicated the urgency of it, and they can take quick decision about what to do with that specific claim. And also the findability has been increased because of the familiar design pattern. Now, when we click on one specific claim, so there is a mental model which is established that we can actually see the most important critical details on the top and act upon it. Right? And also at each stage, what was missing, and it was focused towards it. So the highlights were made just to increase that findability. And also it was highlighted where that step needs to be executed. Also here, it was more like there is a suggestion that was being showcased, which is related to the missing item which was there in this whole claim. So as a result, they don't need to actually pick up a phone and call or reach out to the desk. So as a result, there is a focus, there is a mental model which is established, right? There is enhanced focus, and the discoverability has been enhanced where the details are missing, and also the decision can be taken very quickly. So as a result, the main problems, like what was the complex rules, the confusion is clearly removed from the system. Like there are guided next steps, there is a clear focus what to act upon, and there is no dependency because what are the action items they could figure out due to color coding, as well as prioritized based on the statuses of the claims. And also it's a single unified system where it's not a lengthy process, they can do it quickly with very less learnability curve. And also there is a communication workflow which is established where they don't need to actually talk to other people and where the productivity can be risked. And the same thing is reflected in a tracking experience too, where if the claim is rejected and they can actually see in the same way why it was rejected, what was wrong, what went wrong, and who is responsible person, and also communicate with them here itself. It translates to the tracking experience. As a result, the guidance part of the component which I've defined is there. Like there are defined next steps for each and every stage of it. There are reminders for each and every stage, each and every claim. There's an advisory system where the discovery and findability is very much established, and also that it is more quickly runnable. And also the communication system is established. How and reduce the offline mode of communication, as well as the accountability has been increased. So what were the outcomes achieved? So here it was more like there's an increase in time filing due to this increased discoverability, findability, and accountability. And most of the dependencies and ambiguity has completely been reduced. As a result, the timeliness component has been established, and the 50% is actually saved. The rejection rate has been down by 50%. This is how exactly I have communicated during an interview.
So there are a couple of different questions that we are getting through. And I think a lot of questions are literally like, hey, where did you get the data from? Right. So where did you get all of this data from, Bhaskar?
So this was more kind of closed project here. So I could access to whoever the responsible person were there in the company. And then I could actually ask for that because I have planned for it. And I thought it was necessary to take the data. And it was easily reachable kind of.
Right. So essentially what you did was this was from your work experience. You were working in the company, even though it was a type 1 company, right? You were doing type 3 work in that. You were practicing type 3 work and you're getting all the data and you're pushing it, making it happen, right? And that is something that I would say there's no such thing as, even if the company is type 1, type 2, they may not recognize what you're doing, but it is in your hands to do type 3 work. Right? And that type 3 work helps you create amazing portfolios. And the moment Bhaskar presented it, he didn't even talk about the salary. So that's the other question. So what did you say when people asked you for your salary? What did you really, what was your answer?
So I cannot communicate because that is not what I was looking for. Salary is not my component. Just value what my work is and pay my market rate, whatever I'm worth. And even this test out, I didn't actually reveal the salary at this point.
Okay. That's exactly what it is. Because if you notice Bhaskar's work, he did just phenomenal work. He did not focus. And this is, another thing, right? When you compare to the first portfolio to the last portfolio, right? In the first portfolio, you're talking about the whole process, right? In this portfolio, you didn't really talk about everything, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So when I started realizing that in an ecosystem level, there was no kind of artifacts. Artifacts was kind of expected. It's like a non-negotiable thing. But when I talked about the experience and all, it made me create new artifacts, how to actually explain the process in a much different way in terms of problem solving as well as communicating in the ecosystem.
So interestingly, the artifacts were all the same. The way you told the story was very different. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Interesting. The other one was you didn't talk about research at all here.
Yeah. So in any kind of thing, so even if it was research, I didn't find. So there was one component where research was there, like testing out the prototype, how there was there, the time component and all. So I thought in the whole storyline, that's what a research. Research provides a value there, and what I have prioritized there. I didn't talk about what I did before, what I did after. Where it was necessary, I brought down those elements.
Fascinating. Cool. So there are some, let's see, most of the portfolios have a proper design process. So Ritika says this. They have a proper design process that includes user personas, user testing, but due to the shortage of time and maybe companies' budgets, designers don't experience this process. So how to showcase the missing thing? I have seen designers are putting fake user personas just to make his or her portfolio better. What would you do in this case?
So if there were people who are expecting the whole kind of design thing, And it's highly impossible to communicate in 15 minutes. Either they need to spend it before even shortlisting. So even before shortlisting, it's just about a 5 minutes. I don't think that kind of approach actually works for the companies or even the person who is doing it. And coming to the second part, there is no time to execute. I don't think, I mean, we need to trade off few things based on the time available to it. So how do prioritize? Let's say if there is a project which is coming and it has tighter deadline. Now, what is the main problem? We need to think about those lines and execute it. I mean, there can be trade-offs, but eventually when you're talking about it, if we haven't done the process, we cannot communicate it effectively in any point of time or define it in an interview. So that's the challenge which is there, which comes when we actually experience them.
Right. So I think one of the core things that you're saying is do not lie on your resume or your portfolio.
Yes.
Right. Only talk about what you've done. Right. And interestingly, this is something that I think everybody should realize. Maybe, they're not understanding, but Bhaskar wanted to change. He wanted to get into a type 3 company, but he also realized he did not have all of these opportunities. So he basically spent a year perfecting his skills, right? And then he spent another probably like a few months perfecting the communication style, because all those 4 portfolios over a period of 3 months or 4 months, he was applying to jobs and doing all that and perfecting how to talk about it. And again, he was thinking everything, but he was not talking about it. Now, I would love for you guys, like for those of you that are interested, we have a video on YouTube where Anita, who's another one of our members, did a job. So she did like classic, like, she's that kind of person who would get hired into a type 3 company. But the way she told the story was not type 3, right? She was telling the story like a type 1 company. Okay. She did type 3 work, type 1 story. So that is an interesting thing. So if you're interested, look at her portfolio review, then you'll get a lot of, hints in terms of how to do it and what the quality of work is and how to kind of communicate. So Amit says, how long did it take to make the design final? How long did you execute this project?
It took around 2 months when I was executing the project, completing the whole process which I was doing, then applying. So there was the interesting thing that each and every day there was a catch up with the client. So he needs to actually review each and every day. So that's what worked out, because I could actually communicate with the client what was the thing, and then I could ask questions. I could request the data which was needed, and which really helped me execute in the process of 2 months.
Right. Yeah. So guys, I think, our intention with Bhaskar presenting is we want to really show the value of getting something done really, really well, right? So what we will do tomorrow is exactly what you're looking at, is like, okay, we want to understand what your strengths and weaknesses and your interests are, and then you have to create a strategy for yourself, right? So in this case, if you look at Bhaskar, he basically said, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? He created a strategy and he basically went for it in his portfolio. Okay. That is the exact same thing that you will want to do. So what we're going to do is, let's go back to our deck. There is I just want to cover this, and then I'm going to talk about how we're going to customize for you. So the key lessons when you think about what, Bhaskar has done is he basically focused on core philosophies, right? He did not show every screen. He showed the core artifacts. He didn't show all experiences as well. He just looked at it and said, this is the users, one specific user, 3 screens, and this was a specific experience. He did not look at everything. He didn't look at all the unnecessary research. He didn't show personas. Notice there was no persona anywhere, right? And when you're applying for type 3 companies, we know that not everybody can do everything, right? We know it. And so again, type 3 companies, keep in mind, are specialized in nature. So we are looking to see whether what you claim you know that really well or not, right? I don't care if you do good visual. And again, I've worked in all kinds of type 3 companies in my life, pretty much only type 3 companies in my life. And I'm colorblind. I can't do visual design, right? And I still have, I've built an amazing career for myself. And so I think the point that I would say for you is, it's not about doing everything. It's about understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are, building that out, also realizing, look back at your work and see what you have done really well, especially for those of you that have working experience. And then how do you kind of customize it and talk about it in a way that is very compelling for the person that's listening. Okay, so this is where, Bhaskar focused on core philosophies, core artifacts. He created opportunities for the interviewer to ask him questions. Because then the interviewer says, why did you do this? Why did you not do this? Now you are actually talking like two friends, as opposed to like, oh, I don't like this. It is like, bad alignment and all that. There was no discussion on that. And then finally, it was all about his strengths and weaknesses and what the company was looking for. That was the game here. Okay, so really good job, Bhaskar. And I know there's a lot of you that have questions. We are going to start about 30 minutes early tomorrow, and we're going to do, this is going to go on YouTube Live. Rajiv will put the link for you. But whatever questions you have, I apologize because, we are going beyond the 1 hour. So whatever questions you have that are not answered, please put them on this YouTube video. Put your questions down here. We will curate them, and tomorrow we will talk about them systematically. But let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so what we've done today is we've looked at the jobs, what are the different specializations. We looked at how people will hire you, and we have looked at a really good portfolio as well as the story. So is everybody cool with this? Did everybody get what we're talking about? So Sutapa says, how important is in English language for communication? Bhaskar, you want to take that question? Because I know a lot of people have the same question.
So let's say there is a misconception that English language needs to be there. But the point is, wherever, even in my presentation, I just communicated, so what was the problem? There was no English that was involved. So I just noticed what was it. So what was it would take just of 2 or 3 words, and it could be easily communicated even with, if you don't know the grammar, English grammar or something. So fundamentally, communication is different and English language is different. So we can actually learn communication, how to actually talk about certain specific aspects of it. So I think it's not that important. If you have it, it would be a plus. But if not, it's okay to have it.
Cool. Awesome. And I think this is where we have like the 34 interview questions and all that. This is really, really important because, even for Bhaskar, he practiced a lot, right? He put his presentation and he just went in again and again and practiced. He got critiques. So there were different college members, his peers were giving his feedback and critiquing him. His mentors were critiquing him. I was critiquing him, right? So there was a lot of feedback and a lot of practice that he did. Every time he kind of got a number, he would come back and say, okay, now what? And say, we think you can do better than this. Let's go back and do it again. We think you can do better than this. Go back and do this, right? So he was saying, I got a 2x salary. I want to join. No, you can do better than this. Go back, right? Oh, I got this much salary. Go back and do it better. So it's like, even for Bhaskar, he was like, I don't know how much salary I'm going to get. But Prasad is continuously making us do this. But that's what the thing is. You just have to practice, and your communication will work out. English is optional. Okay. So, what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to talk about UX specializations. We're going to do a comparative analysis of different portfolios so you understand what is a good portfolio, what is a bad portfolio. And again, we will talk or get a lot deeper into different kinds of portfolios, and we will answer a lot of your questions there as well. And then on day 3, we're going to talk about communication to up-level your title, because again, how do you show that you're senior? How do you know that you're capable? So that is something. And there is something that Bhaskar did in this video that actually moved him. He was like a junior, he was an IC in the previous company, and now he's gone into a senior load. So it's actually like a double promotion in some cases. So there is a secret technique that he used in his portfolio presentation. So I would actually encourage you, go back and watch this video a couple of times and see what secret he did. And then you can actually see whether it works or not. And I will tell you if you can catch that trick that he did. Okay. Now, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so here's something that you need to do if you want to create your own personal strategy. Okay, now this is the Discord. We have a Discord channel. Join the Discord channel. So you can just literally take a screenshot, or sorry, scan this QR code, and then you can get going. The other one is, once you join there, you will get your task. You will get a survey. And this survey is just coming to us. And what we will do is we will analyze it and we will tell you what your strengths are. Are you interaction, visual, research? Where are you specializing? And then that will be the start of your customization for your job. Okay. So this is basically what we're going to do. And let's see. So yeah, for people that are asking for, hey, I'd like some mentoring and stuff like that, let's talk about it tomorrow, because I don't want to waste your time. Tomorrow we will start 30 minutes early. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get the notification when that event starts. Okay. And Monica says, you notice that we do open UX design training in Hyderabad. No, we actually do not do in Hyderabad. It's 100% remote. And the training that I do for Bhaskar it's actually got an interview process, and we are all closed for 2023. 2024 will open sometime next year. So that intensive program is purely, it's designed for future leaders. Like there's an interview process and a selection criteria for that. However, for people that are just starting off their career, we have something as well where, we have a lot of free content, free videos for you on YouTube, on Medium and all that. We will share all of that content with you. No worries. And then we also do like mentor feedback sessions and all that. So we can talk about that on day 3. But for now, don't worry about it. Just enjoy, listen, absorb. I think that's what I would love for you guys to do. All right. So with that said, thank you very much, guys. See you tomorrow. If you have any questions, again, go to this video. This is the live video, and you can click on live, in fact, and then you can just put in your questions at the bottom. We will curate it and then we will answer them tomorrow. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great rest of the day. See you tomorrow. Bye.